So, hi film family. Today our special guest is back in round 2. We recorded last week, but 7 days is a long time when you're kind of starting off and learning new things. So thank you for coming back and giving me another hour. It is an absolute honour and a privilege. So please tell the listeners who you are and what your role is on the call sheet.
Hello, first of all, and thank you for having me in this excellent podcast of yours, which I think is a great idea because I don't know of anything else similar to or addressing the issues that you're doing, which I think is a great benefit. So I'm very, very happy to be here.
Thanks.
Pleasure. My name is Matt Clyde, otherwise known as, and my job title is First Assistant Director, and that is what is on the call sheet.
Cool. And so what does that mean, and what do you do on a film set?
I run the floor for the director, so I'm the sort of project manager, sort of factory floor manager, kind of thing. So in other words, my job is to be the voice of the director on set in terms of I'm the one that does the shoot schedule, talks to every department, and make sure that people know how the day is going to run, what is coming next, and fill in all the gaps in between so the director doesn't have to worry about those things. So the director can just talk about the performance, figure out with wardrobe or styling what they're wearing, and also just get to the finer, nuanced communication with actors, the agency, the client, so that the running of the floor, the boring stuff, if you like, but
non-glamorous,
the mechanics of the shoot. So that's what I take care of.
And what would a typical job look like? How does it start? What do you do? And then how does it end?
So,
I guess where do you normally, are you short form or long form?
Short form,
yep.
Exclusively commercials. I did think about doing long form, but decided against it because the good thing about commercials is that they're short. You're in and you're out most of the time. There are commercials that go on for 10, 15 days, but most of the time you're looking between 2 and 4 days for a commercial. So you're in and you're out. It's a freelance lifestyle style even. You get booked on short projects. So the first phone call is to what they call a diary service. So they're not really an agent as such, but people call them to find out my availability. And so I then take the job. And at that point, I get sent the storyboards, the rough schedule that's been determined by the producer, and any other information about cast, location availability, etc., etc. So that's my first entry point, is usually an email. And then from there, you're booked on a technical recce. So which means you turn up on your location or your studio, and you have all the heads of department, whether it be a DOP, director of photography, or the production designer, the gaffer who will deal with all the lighting alongside with the DP, and any other specialist head of department. It could be a stunt coordinator, it could be a wire person who's dealing with wires, or a home economist. It could be anyone, but it's usually the heads of department. So we turn up, say for example, on a location shoot, and we look at all the locations. So in other words, my first entry point is really at the technical recce. At which point you then determine from all the information that you discuss and go through on the tech recce, how then the shoot will evolve. So
what are you talking about on the tech recce's?
Generally, we're talking about the logistics. It's multifaceted. So primarily, you go through with the director on each single storyboard that they have for that location. And then you discuss what's happening in the scene. You then look at the timing of that, and usually your first port of call is light. Mm-hmm. So on a location specifically, it's about light availability. So you do that, and
so the sun's in the right place for the shot that you want. Yeah, okay.
You know, usually somebody is backlit and it all looks beautiful, and that's what we should aim for. Now, then that's, from my point of view, that's the priority. Then you have to look at, okay, are there children? Mm-hmm. What time can the children arrive? Because we're given a set of guidelines for working with children.
Which, on a side note, is going to be its own separate podcast.
Exactly. So listen,
I don't know why I changed the voice there and got a little bit closer to the mic. But
close mics, not creepy at all. So then you look at light, and then you look at all the other factors.
Okay.
So location availability. If you're shooting in a residential street, sometimes you can't start before 7:30, 8 o'clock because the residents are fed up with people banging trucks around and making noise. So you have to then determine from your list of essential things what takes priority and what therefore then guides how best to shoot. Mm-hmm. And what you're looking for primarily is time saving and how to get the most out of the time that you have with the resources that are available to you to maximize the shooting time for that scene. So then it becomes a careful balance of where you need to be, at what time, and how much pre-call, how much preparation time there needs to be in order to do the first shot or the first scene. So then you have to sort of work backwards from that, really. Generally, in filmmaking, you start with a wide shot and then you go in close. Mm-hmm. Because whatever you do in the wide shot determines how you shoot the close-up.
So you learn from in the wide?
You learn in the wide, you learn the blocking. You learn blocking being how people move around a set. You know, if someone's in the kitchen, so there's a boyfriend and girlfriend are in the kitchen around a breakfast bar, and then mum walks in from camera right, then you know that she's got to still walk in on camera right when you go from the close-up. Mm-hmm. If you start with the close-up, and you say, okay, mum's walking in from camera right, and then you go to the wide, and then you work out that physically mum can't walk in from camera right, then you have to then shoot that close-up again. So always start with the widest possible theme, so you know the geography of the scene.
Is that useful for any other department shooting wide as well?
Yes. For example, you know, if someone's eating a sandwich, you know how many bites of the sandwich, you know at which point they've bitten the sandwich within the dialogue, and you know where everything is placed. And in this world of commercials, the mise en scène, if you like, the arrangement of the space is key because you have 30 seconds to tell a story. So every frame counts. Every frame within that scene counts. So from all sorts of reasons, from art directing wise, from how the client and the agency and the director wants the space to feel, determines that scene. So you sign everything off, you make sure that you've got it all right for the wide shot, and then once you're in the close-up, actually you can cheat a lot of it, but you must start with the wide.
Okay, so you've been confirmed on a job.
Yeah.
You've got all your boards and your information, storyboards, you've got your scripts. You've gone on the tech recce. What then comes next?
The schedule.
Okay.
Determine the schedule. Write the schedule.
How do you do a first draft of it?
How do you do a first draft? You throw everything up in the air and see where it lands. Not true. You, from the tech recce, you work out your timings. I mean, you know, a good exercise is to divide the number of scenes by the hours you have in the day. Just first of all, right? So I've got 10 scenes. My maths is terrible.
We won't hold you to it.
We've got X amount of scenes to achieve in this much time.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got 2 hours per scene, for example. Right? The standard shooting day without incurring overtime is 10 hours plus 1 hour for lunch. So you've got 11 hours. So then you do your rough maths and say, okay, how can we fit this all in within that amount of time? Then it soon becomes apparent that more often than not you can't, so that then you have to go, okay, so there's going to be 2 hours overtime a day, something like that. Then you think, okay, so how can I minimise that overtime? Because paying overtime on a small team, be it the art department, which is 5 people, or the electricians, which is another 6 people, maybe we call them in early to get prepared, and then the rest of the unit comes in. So it's all about minimising cost, actually, so that you know that you can get something done with, and if there is going to be an overage or overtime, you try and make that the least figure possible, because everybody has to work to a budget, and that's why we're all here. Because it's a job like any other. It's getting paid. It's working on a production line. I need X amount of packages done in this amount of time, and they've got to go out the door. Otherwise, the whole week's schedule is screwed. So much like anything else, it's about minutes and seconds. And once those add up, you know, a 10-minute discussion about a particular scene. If you have 6 of those, which is quite easy, that's an hour. So you've lost an hour, and you know that, and you sort of figure that one out. You say, well, with the discussions, with everything like this, the reality is we've got 40 minutes to shoot X. So, and that's kind of where experience comes in, is because the more experienced you are, and the more you've seen it all, then the more you can mitigate against all those niggly bits that all add up to time and time wasted. So I've forgotten the original question. Is what's the next step? The next step is to determine the schedule. You determine the schedule on what time you can get into the location, what time you need to shoot. If you're working with children, you've got to do it within specific hours. If you're working with animals, you know you've got a finite amount of time with an animal before they just don't do what you want them to do. And then also you've got to realise if you're moving from one location to another, you have to factor that into the day as
The unit move.
So a unit move is not just, we'll just pick up the camera and go down the road. The trucks have to be packed up. You have to figure out if the caterers are going to do breakfast in one place and they need to turn lunch around by, you know, within 5 hours, where's the best place for the caterers to be? You know, all of that kind of stuff, because you want to minimise the effect that changing or moving has on the shooting day. So it's a puzzle, and that's the kind of joy of it, is figuring out the challenge. And it's different on every occasion, and each particular shooting scenario brings with it its own set of challenges.
And for a first version on a schedule, how realistic are you for that first version? You know, if you think it goes till midnight, do you put down, I think this is going to go till midnight?
Yeah, I would always err on the side of caution. And there's 2 reasons for this. Is firstly, you're probably right as a first. You know that it's going to take a certain amount of time. So put that down, because then it's also a matter of record. So if an email gets sent and says, I think it's going to be 16 hours, then you should say that. And then the producer will come and go, oh, well, we've only got 11. And then you have a discussion. And then more often than not, you can reach a compromise. But it has to be across the departments. It has to be a discussion that everyone's involved in. And also people need to know the reality, because you're not giving people a fair hit at what they need to achieve, because they need to know their limitations, and they need to know that they have a certain amount of time to do it. And if you think what the production has in and it's the hours that they've allotted for the amount you've got to shoot. You have to be honest and upfront.
Okay.
After that, if the producer says, which has happened on a few times, you need to make this 12 hours, then you say, okay. And there's different theories on this. Some people will say, here's my Excel document, you do it, because this is now not my schedule. Or what I would do is I say, okay, you have my original schedule. This is your 12-hour schedule. But I'm telling you now that it's not going to work. And listen, more often than not, it's fine. And it's good that you've been very clear up front.
Does it help for conversations to happen where certain things that may have just been bigger in people's heads actually then needs to become smaller as an entity, and that can actually be a useful conversation to have? So instead of 1,000 people for that 2-second spot, you kind of go, well, actually, a 16-hour day, I need to have less people because then it's less time and less how much change can happen from a bigger schedule to a more realistic schedule?
Well, at that point, it's kind of out of your hands because because as a first AD you come in relatively late in the process. Some may argue too late, because before you've even turned up, there's been about 3 to 4 weeks of pre-production, budgeting, pre-production meetings, conversations in a room that will go on for 2 hours with the agency of the client of what has been promised.
Yeah, I guess us then, as an AD turning up and going, it can't be done. Actually, it's at that point, the producer goes white and looks at you, panics, and says, "Well, it has to be done because we said we could do it." And there's the rub, there's the tension always, and there's usually a way through. But that's why you have to be candid and have to be clear that, I mean, to take a case in point, just the other week when we first met doing this podcast, I'd just finished a job. I was due for the tech recce. I got the storyboards at 7 o'clock in the evening, the night before the tech recce. I could clearly see from the boards that this was going to be an 18 to 20 hour day. I mean, it was just very, very, very obvious to me. And my first call was to the producer as soon as I got the boards, and I said, look, this can't be done in a day. So we need to have in a 10+1.
Oh,
in a 24-hour
day. Done in a day.
Yeah.
Let alone 11 hours. There's puppeteering, there's children, and there's a house. So shooting in a kitchen. Now, one thing you've got to remember, the smaller the environment, if you're shooting in a real house, the slower it's going to go. Because you've got a lot of people in a small space, all trying to move around and set lights and have room enough for the camera. Add to that children, add to that puppeteering, which can take some time to get right. You're looking at maximum 4 to 5 things that you can achieve in a day. This was 8. So I said to her, look, you have to be, look, I'm telling you now that this won't be done in a day. Okay, well, we can remove a couple of shots. I said, look, a couple of shots, that's not going to cut it. So as long as we go into this recce knowing that, then that's fine. So we all met the next day. We sat around, we talked through everything, and it became very clear very quickly that we won't be able to do this in a day. So at that point, the director of photography says, I could solve this, but there needs to be a compromise. What we do is we have 2 units side by side in the house. Luckily, there were 2 directors so that they could split themselves. Okay. And we had one team shooting 2 commercials next door to us while we were shooting the rest of it. And we actually got it done and it was fine.
But without that second unit, it would
Without that second unit, there's no way.
And actually, even if there was one director, would that have had a... Because I guess you would have...
I don't think you would have been able to do it, personally, because the director has to be across everything. At which point, I don't know what happens. I think it's then up to the producer, unfortunately. And I wouldn't want to be that person.
But you got it done.
We got it done. You would have brought in maybe a second unit director at that point, who's a trusted pair of hands, either within the company or that somebody knows, to just take care of that. Or a DP, an extra DP that can specifically take responsibility. But so the point is, you need to call it out as soon as you see it, because there's no point.
Then you can fix the problem.
You can fix the problem. Yeah. Be honest, fix the problem, because while we're all keen to please people and tell people and be enthusiastic, especially when you're on your way up, yes, it can be done. Be honest, because if you don't think it can be done, then there's always a discussion to be had. But you must be clear up front.
And I guess as good as it is coming up being the yes, it can be done, I guess there's also something to be said about being the man or woman that's always saying, no, it can't be done. So it's finding that fine balance between your gut instinct or experience, however the...
Yeah, I mean, look, a part of our role as a first AD is to be the person that says the things that people don't want to hear. Now, whether it's a director or a producer or a DP or whoever it might be, you have to be the person that's keeping this machine moving. Because once the train leaves the station, it's away, right? And it's constantly moving. So you're the one that is responsible, essentially, for bringing this in on time. And you have to be the voice of reason. And that can be difficult, and it can be, you have to say the tough things. And more often than not, people aren't going to like you for it. But it's not a personal thing.
Where does an AD sit between the crew and production?
They generally, look, the clue's in the title, it's the assistant director. So primarily, you're there for the director, right? You then become the linking point really between the director and the crew. And another part of this is between production and the crew. So a lot of it is actually looking after people's welfare. If someone says, I want to shoot solidly for 18 hours, no one's allowed a break. You have to say, I'm sorry, we must have a break. There are rules that guide that, and financial penalties that guide that. If you don't break 5.5 hours after you call for lunch, then there's a penalty. If you don't break an hour, there's a penalty. If between the time that you wrap and you call the next day, there's a penalty for that. There's a minimum of 11 hours. So you're there to keep those things in place. But you also have to be flexible because, and listen, different personalities of first ADs, this approach differs. But from my mind, you're there as a team, you're there as a whole, and you have to get this done together. A lot of people will be very militant. A lot of first ADs will have an attitude where production are just out to fleece everybody and they're all idiots. Sure, there are a few, but
every
in my experience, it's 70-30 or even 80-20. There are producers that are hurting because they know that their budget's tight. And they're not just saying it to make a huge profit. On the other hand, there are certain people where profit is key and everything, and then they will squeeze people in order to get that money out. So really you're there to look after people's welfare, to aid the director, and to make sure everything is safe. So
if the director says, I want to go one more time, but you, on your schedule you're running a little bit late, is it the job of the AD to be like, we can't go again? Or as the assistant to the director, we go, yeah, we go again. And it's someone else's job to say, no, you can't have any.
It's a bit of both. I mean, look, you know your schedule. You know inherently, because you've been doing this thing and writing it and rewriting it and figuring it out. You've been going into the minutiae of every scene. Listen, if it's the first shot of the morning and you're over, chances are you're going to be able to make it up on the back end of the day. So you know really inherently which scenes are going to take longer than others. So if a director is running over and they just can't find their magic or their feet, or the child isn't performing or the actor's just not hitting it, you have to be flexible. And they say, we need to go again. And you say, well, I'm going to give you 2 more. And then you must move on because X, Y, Z. And you lay it out. Don't bullshit people. Say, look, if you run over on this, then you're not going to get that. Or your time is going to be squeezed there. And listen, directors always think about this. They always know how much time that they've got. Some will willfully ignore you, deliberately. Others will listen to you. But you know when you have to be hard, and you know when you have to say, this can't happen, you cannot go again. More often than not, you say it to the director and the producer at the same time. Because then the producer has to then go and tell everybody else in the back room, whether it's the agency and client. Now, maybe it's not the director that's pushing for it, and maybe the agency and client would want to do it again. At that point becomes a financial discussion as well. So there's not only there's light, the sun is going down, and the child needs to go home, or the child should have gone home 5 minutes ago. It's also a financial thing. So there's all these things in play, which can, if you let it, all bear down on you as a first. But the it's that old adage: if you can keep your head about you when I can't. Rudyard Kipling. It's a great mantra for a first AD. When all others are losing theirs and blaming it on you. And that's basically our life. Nice. That is our life. But keep calm, keep focused, and keep rational. And usually everyone will, after screaming and wailing and gnashing teeth, will probably figure out that actually you're there to help. You're not there to hinder them.
Fair. And so, how long did it take to get in? What was your route into the industry? Did you just suddenly go, I'm a first AD, boom, straight out of A levels? What's the route in?
God, no. I was at university. I was doing a film degree.
Okay.
But it was more a theory rather than a practical. So it was more academic than practical. So lots of film history and things like that. I managed to get a work experience job at Sky Television in my second year summer. And so I did a summer there, and then after about, 2 weeks, I worked hard as a runner, and they started to pay me for my time, and I thought, wow, this is good. And then I had to go back to uni, and then in my third year, I went back again, and they paid me as a runner. So that I started as a runner, making tea, listening to people, fetching things, and I was quite humble, quite nervous, but wanted to make a good impression. So I just sort of kept my head down and made sure that I was there and available. And so from doing my second lot of essentially work experience but being paid at Sky, I then was sort of on the brink of leaving university. So I called one of the production managers that I had been working for at Sky, and she had just started in a company that was opened by Ridley Scott's commercials producer, and it was called Godman, and it was a huge production company in Soho, and I went in there full time as a full-time runner, office boy there. So, and I was there for a year, and then because I was taken on shoots, I met a lot of other first ADs and became more of a set runner, really. And then I decided to leave that production company and go freelance.
Freelance as a
runner.
Okay.
As a runner. So you became a freelance runner. You joined a diary service, which was recommended. I got recommended by a few first ADs, and then you start working for those people on a freelance basis, and then you meet other people, and then it's life. You meet people, you meet other people. Those, by doing that, you meet more people, and then suddenly I think I was 5 or 6 years went by, and I was working for a lot of very popular first ADs. And then from there on in, I started to go up the ranks into third AD, and then second AD. And then that was another 6 years, so it was about 11 years of that, and then the rest is, and then I became a first, and then that's been 15 plus years of doing that.
And did you get into that first job in Sky and go, oh yeah, I love being a runner, or I love Sky, or
I like being paid.
Yeah, fair play.
And it wasn't,
It wasn't an office 9 to 5.
Yeah, it wasn't an office 9 to 5. I was, I've been working, I think, since I was about 14 in coffee shops and restaurants and stuff like that, and doing all that kind of stuff. And I was also, at the time, I used to be in a band, playing drums, and then that brings it with it its own sense of a kind of freelance lifestyle where nothing's ever permanent. You sort of, I go to a studio at 11 o'clock and you piss about, and then it's not a regular job. So it kind of suited that, and I was familiar with it. Plus it was incredible. I'd loved movies all my life, really, and to see it happening, even though they were commercials, it's still people
it's the same process.
Sort of hauling a rock up a mountain and watching it roll down the hill and then hauling it up again. I mean, it's kind of a ridiculous thing that we do, but there's some magic about it, and there's something incredible about watching 150 people all trying to get to the same point in whatever role that they're doing. Driving a van, or making a sandwich, or setting a light, or being responsible for how the camera moves. Everybody is there and focused on this one thing. And that's kind of incredible. And to see it come to life and to be in a studio. I remember going to Ealing Studios for the first time and being so overwhelmed by the history of it, all the Ealing comedies from the 1950s, and seeing it and feeling it in the walls was really special.
So was that like a lightning bolt moment for you for ADing, or for the industry, or
no, it was just more of a sense of excitement. There was a lightning bolt moment where I found myself in a situation where I was it had been the end of a long shooting day, and they had to do one more scene, and they had an actress in a black cab with a driver, and so I got told to lie on the floor of an old black cab. And this
driving around London?
Yeah. Driving
low
around
loader
London.
or just
no low loader. So just completely independently. And this was, these weren't the new brand spanking new cabs. This was an old cab with a crappy old floor,
the dirt on the
dirt, the whole bit. And I was lying there, and I was given a walkie-talkie, and I was lying on the floor, and the cab was going really fast around London. I was trying to sort of steady myself, so I was rolling around on the floor. I had the first AD over the walkie-talkie shouting instructions to the actress, of which I would then repeat it, which was kind of a pointless exercise because she could probably hear it through the radio anyway. And then suddenly it dawned on me that what other type of work, or when else are you going to do this? I'm rolling around on the floor with this rather hot actress, I'll be honest, telling her what to do, and we're going round and round and round again for an hour or so, and I'm watching the street lights whizzing by above me, thinking this is the best job in the world.
Yeah.
And I recently, weirdly, I had a very similar experience when I was a first AD, this was 5 years ago, a bit more, where we were in Iceland, and it was a car commercial for Range Rover, and I was responsible for the whole thing. There was a helicopter.
Wow.
There was a precision driver. There was an actress. And I was on a satellite radio with the police to lock off 2.5 miles of road.
What?
And the helicopter was there to film it. So the one thing you got to remember about a helicopter, they're noisy and they're big and they're hot and they're just noisy, big things, right? And and it's pretty real. Once you see one of these things, and there's a cameraman hanging out the side of this thing, and it's the engines are going and the rotor's going, and suddenly you've got to clear the area because there's dust and there's wind and people get their heads chopped off and they're too close. All that stuff.
Yeah.
This thing goes up in the air. Again, I'm sitting, rolling around on the floor of this Range Rover, but this time we're going 120 miles an hour down a locked off road.
Wow.
And I'm relying on a satellite radio speaking to an Icelandic police force. So I'm pretty sure what I'm saying is getting through.
Yeah, the translation isn't, it's...
Pretty sure.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what you've got. Lock it off. That's it. Okay, it's locked off. I'm looking at the local production manager. He's nodding at me. I'm going, okay, great. And action. So we start driving down this fucking road, 120 miles an hour. And I'm lying on my back, and I look to my right, and the helicopter is screaming, and it's so close to the car you can even touch it. And I'm seeing this thing, and then it just banks over the top, over the sunroof, and goes back again. And suddenly there's all the elements there. I'm going 120 miles an hour with a precision driver on a locked off road with a noisy helicopter just skimming the top of the car. And I'm there again. It's like I've been taken back 15 years, and I'm going, again, this is the best job in the world.
Wow.
The best job in the world. So, two lightning bolts moment, one when I was a runner, and then flash forward 15 years later, I'm doing exactly the same thing, but I'm actually in control of all of those things, and I'm responsible for safety, and we're getting the shot, and it looks beautiful, and everybody is just wetting themselves because this car looks incredible.
Yeah.
And, you're partly responsible for that, partly. But it was great.
That sounds amazing. Like that's when the big toys come out, and you're like, that's
the thing, And there's other jobs. God, I mean, I could carry on forever, but I did an army job. We had 5 Chinooks. We had some attack helicopters. I had 3 full units. About 300 army people going through a forest. We had tanks. We had smoke effects. We had the full bit. And you're in control.
You're ready for war.
You're the one that's doing it all. And, and that's great. And that's fun. And it happens. And, little did I know, being this quite humble, 23-year-old when I first started, that it could ever be like this. But it just happens, The more you do it, the more it happens. And that's the thing, is that this industry isn't reserved for the people with the talent or that incredible thing that you think is intangible because you're young and you just have no idea. You go to work day to day and you do it over a number of years and you'll find yourself in that position. So it's a tangible thing and it can be done. And that's what I didn't realise when I was younger. Is that I thought all of this was reserved for people far better than I was, far more talented than I was. And that's not necessarily true, because actually it's about hard work. And you turn up for work and you do it and you do it and you do it, and then suddenly 10, 15, 20 years has gone by and you think, God, I've been there. I've been in those moments, and that's what's great. And if you're interested in film or making something, then this is a great business to be in.
Have you got any advice for those starting off? What would be the advice that you'd give to your younger self?
Be more confident when you're younger. But I think if I was going to give advice to anybody, not necessarily just myself, I would just say turn up on time or be early. Actually, be early. Be 10 minutes early, wherever you are. But to myself, I would say just be a bit more confident, because it took me, 12 years, 6-7 years as a runner is a long time, but I didn't think that I was worthy enough to move on, There are 2 types of people, really. There's the blaggers and then there's the people that actually do their homework, and it's the guys that do the homework, the people that do the homework, that actually probably get further. You know, I always think it's astonishing to see how people can bullshit their way to certain positions. I mean, that's a skill in itself. And sometimes they do very well. But my thing is, do your homework, earn your stripes, start at the bottom, because you know, some people move more quickly than others for different reasons, blah, blah, blah. But, you know, be a runner, do your homework, see how people operate. Because then you have the choice of whatever you want to do. You can see all the departments, you know. If you want to come out of film school and be a DP, great, fine. But just be aware that you don't know everything. No one knows everything. So all the more important to just learn and don't think that you know everything, because you don't. Sam Mendes doesn't know everything, you know.
He's getting there.
He's getting there, for sure. But, you know, 1917, you know, that was a massive learning curve for him, you know. And I'm sure at times he turned up on set and they're going for the 15th take of a one shot and it's still not working. And I defy that not to get to anyone. Of course it will. He's got a huge studio on his back. So you're always going to be learning, whatever you do. So, you know, turn up on time, be early, be keen, be humble, and be willing to do the things that people ask you to do without sort of complaining about it.
Nice. And have you got any little kind of silly or funny stories, industry related?
One story I used to do a lot of live shows, so I used to do a lot of Brit Awards and music awards and things like that, and without name dropping, well, I can't name drop Michael Jackson, Tina Turner.
Just pick that up,
So all those people I used to work with, and I used to be responsible basically for getting them from their dressing room to the stage, because it was a live show. You've got a live broadcast schedule to hit, so you always have to be working ahead. You're always having to get people out of their dressing room early. And with bands like Metallica, or they don't want to get out of their dressing room, and they will keep you waiting. So anyway, so it's the Brit Awards. It's Eminem's first Brit Awards. So the first Slim Shady, and this is when he was in the mask, the Jason mask with the chainsaw and bleach blonde hair. So what had happened is that we were all together there, and we're talking about the day. And the floor manager, we're all in a group, comes up and whispers to someone, and they turn around and go, okay, we've got a problem. So the idea was, and it's on YouTube, there's a set, Eminem's big entrance. So the idea is it's a kind of a false entrance. So it's a big sort of house set. So the idea is that you're looking at the set, this sort of dark music is playing. Suddenly, Eminem enters stage left, and he's got a mask on and a chainsaw. He's waving a chainsaw, and then another Eminem comes out stage right, and he's waving a chainsaw, and then bam, the lights go down to reveal the real Eminem at the bottom of the stage.
The real Slim Shady.
The real Slim Shady. So, in their wisdom, production had hired Eminem lookalikes to do the two first entrances. However, one of them turned out to not be all there mentally, and rather strange, and a bit possessed, and a bit scary in terms of...
As in, like a fanboy?
A fanboy, a super fan of the kind of darker variety,
Stan,
which you wouldn't want anywhere near multi-award-winning, platinum-selling Eminem. So there was a lot of whispering, a lot of eyes, brows raised and stuff, and they said, well, we've got to get rid of him, Who can fill in? And, right, I'm there. I've got short hair. And suddenly the finger comes pointing towards me. Rabbit in the headlights. You'll do. What? Right, we're going to dye your hair. What? And then before I know it, suddenly I've got talcum powder in my hair. I've got this whole thing. They're shaving my head. Right, you're on. Sorry? Suddenly, dungarees, face mask, the whole bit.
Oh, God.
And then suddenly, literally before I know it, I'm by the side of the stage and I've got a guy speaking to me really fast. I have no idea what I'm supposed to be doing. Right, as soon as I point to you, you walk on stage and you wave your chainsaw around. Got it? Lights go down, music goes up. I'm waiting. I'm just waiting. I'm like, I'm going to fuck this up. I'm going to fall over. The set's going to collapse. I'm going to be in a nightmare. Anyway, so suddenly I get the finger points at me. I run on stage. I wave my chainsaw. And of course, the audience think you're Eminem.
Oh, God,
so
the
there
roar.
I am, running on stage.
Love it.
And the roar, and I'm like, oh my God.
Come on!
Waving this fucking chainsaw around. And that was my sort of 5 minutes of fame. All under a face mask, so nobody knows.
So, but you can check it out on YouTube.
Yeah, but you can check it out on YouTube. I don't know which year it was. I can't remember, but it was Eminem's first performance. So, as you're looking at it, look it up on YouTube. Stage right, that's me, waving my chainsaw around.
Look at this, the famous the
so
famous
that
AD.
was kind of a, and that happens all the time, weirdly, there are always solutions, and there you go, you're looking for a solution, you'll do, we're never going to see your face, put the face mask in, run on stage and be Eminem for 30 seconds, okay. And I didn't really have time to sort of say no. Not that I would have, but you're sort of thrust into it, and that's great.
Take it.
And so it's stuff like that, which is great.
Boom. Well, that brings us to kind of towards the end of the podcast.
Oh my God.
What a lovely way to end
quickly.
it. The Eminem body double AD. Love this guy. So have you got any kind of people or projects that you want to give a shout out to?
Well, in a nutshell, about 5 years ago, I decided in myself to slightly move sideways and move into producing. So, and I set up my own production company, and it's a kind of service company, I guess. So I take on young directors, and if they've got a job that's come from somewhere, then I will help them produce it. So that company is called Iron Age Pictures. The website is www.ironagepictures.com. And so if you want to ask me any questions, you can find me through that website.
Great.
And it's kind of, I do that, plus I freelance for other people, plus I'm still very much an AD. So I kind of try to do both, and it keeps a good variety of work. So Iron Age Pictures, and we did just recently, a couple of years ago, I guess, we did an album's worth of music videos for Snow Patrol.
Amazing.
So that was 12 videos back to back,
Wow.
shooting in 5 different countries. So that was a project that I was really proud of. So so that was great. So there you go. That's
Amazing.
my shout out.
Yeah, big. Well, any final thoughts?
Final thoughts. Keep listening to this podcast. Final thoughts. What can I say? If you're a current crew member of the film family, you're the reason I go to work. Let's put it like that, because actually it's about the people. And that's what's great about this, is that it's a collection of people all getting together to do this very ridiculous thing of making a film of some description. And actually it's about the people. And the people that we work with are great, talented, brilliant individuals that are there to do this thing. Obviously we're getting paid. So really my final thought is this industry is made by the people that work in it, and that's kind of why I go to work. And then the second thing is that if you're coming up, be early, as I keep saying, and do your homework. And whether if you're a DP or a director or a runner, do your homework, have a plan. If you're going to make something, make sure you have a plan, because no one else is going to do it for you. Because if you have a plan about what you're going to shoot, you'll end up getting more than you bargained for. If you don't have a plan, you'll get less. And filmmaking is all about having options when you get to an edit. So do your homework, be prepared, and then the rest will kind of figure itself out. So that's my advice.
Amazing. Well, thank you, Mr. Matthew Clyde. Thank you very much for coming back and doing another hour. Really, really do appreciate you kind of coming back and giving us your stories and helping out those kind of film students and media students that wouldn't be able to have this time with you. So really thank you for that. I guess if any of the film family listening, do please subscribe and share the podcast on whatever platform you're listening on. Also go to thetimescheduler.com, which is the website that I've built where it's the hub of everything that we're doing, all the podcasts, the videos that I'm going to make, anything like that, to try and help you find out and have some questions and give you some answers of the film industry. So go there to thetimescheduler.com. And until next time, that is a wrap. So that was a chat with the king or queen in the game. I'll give it a shout at the end so you all know the name. It's the Film Gods Podcast. The what? The Film God Podcast. The Film Gods Podcast was produced by Fiasco Films Limited. Special thanks to Island Studios for the recording space. Music created by Mr. D-Grade and sound engineered by Mr. David Fogarty. And be warned, some episodes do contain explicit language.